in. So really appreciate everyone that's joined the call. And I especially want to thank the Catalyst summer interns that have joined, and as well the members of the project teams, Catalyst Award project teams here at UCSF, and as well the Innovation Ventures staffers, and in particular the business development managers for the projects. And so this is the second of 5 workshops. Tonight's is focused on, first half is focused on market analysis, business analysis, commercialization, which obviously the business aspects of product development are completely key. And the second half, Rupert Ramamurthy is going to be talking about project management. That's capital P, capital N, and project management, which is a discipline in its own right. And she's going to be talking about the tools of project management facilitating product development. And this is a presentation that my colleague Sohaila Shah put together. And Sohaila's on the call, but she had oral surgery, and she can't really talk for a half hour straight, but she can talk. And so some of the questions I might ask her to address, or maybe she'll do it in the chat. But I just want to thank Sohaila for putting this presentation together. I'm actually going to start with a slide I showed last week. These are the fields of the TPP for 2 different product types. On the left are drug, therapeutics product types. On the right is medical device product types. And these would be similar for a diagnostic product or digital health product. And if you note at the top and the bottom in the bold at the top and the bold at the bottom, those are fields that are in common. They're in common across all 4 types of TPPs. And if you look through it, you can kind of, tell why they're in common. And then the fields in the middle in the gray, the non-bolded gray, those are the topics that are specific to a particular modality, drug on the left, device on the right. But why I'm showing this slide again is because of the blue arrows. The blue arrows are the TPP fields involved with business aspects, commercialization aspects, marketing aspects, and the like. And again, that's the topic of the first half of today's session. And so, starting off, there's really 3 fundamental focuses of the business aspect of the TPP. And you can see them here at the top. It's the customer. It's the economic value. For this, we use this CAM-SAM-SOM methodology that I'll describe these acronyms in a minute and describe them. And then the competitive landscape, and these 3 fundamental focuses of customer, economic value, and competition, they're, impacted by or critically influenced by aspects such as the intellectual property status of the product and the opportunity, the regulatory pathway the product has to go through at the FDA or at other regulatory agencies and the like. Human factor considerations that really come into play in things like medical devices and digital health in terms of the user interface and the like. But just think about those those diagnostic tests for COVID, how, especially if you had to switch tests, how some were sort of intuitive and some you really had to read that little card that came with them. Manufacturability, and actually, human factor considerations also come into play with drugs. I mean, whether a drug is a pill or a shot, whether a drug has to be taken 3 times a day or once a day, et cetera, et cetera. Fourth, manufacturability. And then fifth, the desired outcome of the project, that you want to start a startup company, or do you want to out-license the product to a pharmaceutical company or medical device company or the like. Oh, actually, let me just say this again. If you have any questions, raise your hand or just shout them out loud, because I can't really see anybody because I'm looking at the camera, but I can only see a couple people anyway. So questions are fine. Just make yourself heard. Okay. Now, what is business intelligence, and why do you need it for this? Not just for the target product profiles, but for successful product development. It really is the source of the information, really, let's say the knowledge, the data, the information, the knowledge around the customer, the market size, and the competition. Who are the customers? Do they need your product? Do they have to be convinced they want it? In terms of the market, is it big? Is it small? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? And in terms of the competition, how competitive are there already? If you're the first drug for pancreas cancer, that's a lot different than being the 10th, PD-1 immuno-oncology antibody, or the 10th medicine for high blood pressure. And so we'll take these one by one. We'll start off with the customer, the concept of the customer. Now, when it comes to healthcare products, the concept of the customer is actually pretty tricky. It's actually even trickier than the slide. And so going through, if you think about it, the actual end user, the patient that's going to take the medicine, or the patient in whom the medical device is going to be implanted, obviously, they're the customer, or they are a customer, or a feature of the customer. But then, if you think about it, it's really a doctor, it's really a physician that's prescribing the treatment, or prescribing the medicine, or recommending the solution. And so the doctor is, the healthcare provider is the customer. But then at the end of the day, who's paying for it? I mean, is it the insurance company? And if it's an insurance company, or Medicare or Medicaid, they're sort of a customer. And so the concept of the customer in healthcare product development it's tricky, but it's actually, interesting. And so if you're developing a product or starting a company and worried about your customer, you really got to figure that out. Like, who is the key customer that's sort of like the gatekeeper? And speaking of gatekeeper, the FDA is really a customer as well, because you've got to convince them to approve your medicine. I mean, if it doesn't get approved, you're not gonna be able to sell it. And then not to negate, but not to lower the influence of the end user, the patient. As I mentioned last week, just think about all those advertisements on TV today, for psoriasis in particular. And so clearly the companies know that the patient can influence, or is an influence on the purchase, on the decision, even if they can't go buy the product themselves and have to get someone to prescribe it for them and someone to reimburse them for it. And likewise, I've already mentioned this in terms of demand. Will your customer use the product, and what sets your product apart? And just use that same example. If you're the first to market for a new drug for pancreatic cancer, or you're the 10th high blood pressure medicine, it's obviously a way different situation in terms of demand. Okay, how do you learn more about what the customers are looking for, regardless of whether it's prescribing physician, the formulary or insurance company, or the patient. Classic market research of interviews, focus group surveys can be performed. And I've underlined market research reports because that'll probably be a big source of the information that you interns are gonna utilize for those fields of the TPP. For those of you doing the business fields of the TPP. Now, going back to the classic, market research, let's say you are doing, customer discovery, you are doing customer interviews. These are 5 sort of pieces of advice. The first one is sort of important. Don't ask a question that can be answered with a yes or a no. And ask a question in a way that it has to be elaborated on. So you really find out what's going on in their head about this, and listen closely and be prepared to ask follow-up questions to really elicit more and more information. Talk to them about the competition and whether pricing is important or not. And in the case of a digital health product or some medical devices, if you have a prototype, you can bring it with you and show them and ask them what they think about it, and then allow time for more discussion after your set questions. The market reports I already mentioned. This is a report from a company called Grandview Research, as you see in the bottom right. And if you look in the upper left, this is a report on multi-cancer early detection. What's that mean, multi-cancer early detection? What's really hot today, not 10 years ago, and 10 years from now, it's going to be everywhere. It's blood tests for the detection of cancer. These are sometimes called liquid biopsies. Think about how clever that is, liquid biopsy, because we all know what a biopsy is. They take a piece of your tissue, they look at a microscope. So a liquid biopsy is they take some of your blood and they look inside your blood. And what they're specifically looking at in your blood is the DNA in there. And when they look at the DNA in your blood, they're looking for the signature or the hallmark of cancer. And so this report is focused on and then multi-cancer means obviously that they're not just looking for one type of cancer. They're not just looking for prostate cancer. They have the ability to look for lots and lots of different cancers. And if you look at this report, if you look at the 3 pieces of the pie, upper left, regional outlook, and so they compare markets in developing nations versus developed nations. If you look at the bottom at 6 o'clock, it's what types of tests, what types of genes are in the panel. Is it a laboratory developed test? Is it CLIA, et cetera, et cetera. Then upper right, where it's being done, is it being done in hospitals or is it being outsourced to labs and the like? Okay, to get an estimate on money, number of customers, how much you can charge, how much you can make, et cetera, reports are good for that. I mentioned this TAM SOM has just exploded in, I was going to say popularity. Yeah, popularity. It's as simple as the acronyms are, it can be a little boggling. So I'm going to do my best to try to explain this. So the TAM stands for total addressable market. And that's really everybody, let's say, possible that could use the product, right? And so if you think about toothpaste, and some on the call will know I use that example. If you think about toothpaste, it's literally every single person on the globe, okay? And so the TAM is really, if you could sell it to everybody that's eligible for it or appropriate for it, how many people is that, or who is that? Now the SAM is the serviceable available market, and that reduces the number to those that you're going to focus on. And the basis of the focusing can vary, right? The basis of the focusing can vary. And rather than elaborating on that, in 2 slides, I'll elaborate on that. Because there's lots of different ways you can go from, everybody on the planet to who you can really sell it to. Now, then the SOM, the serviceable attainable market, that's super important because that's really your honest, your realistic estimate of how many you can sell, how many people you can sell it to, how much you can charge for it, etc. Because why that's so important is that if you go to a venture capitalist and you say, I want to start a company, I've got this great medical device, and they're going to ask you, well, how many are you going to sell in the first, 5 years or something? You want to be realistic. I mean, obviously, you can give a couple of estimates, an optimistic estimate, a more reasonable estimate, but it's really the key. And as you can see at the bottom there, underlined in bold, it's the proportion that your business is realistically able to capture. And I want to say something that's important, is that for the people working on the business portions of the TPP, and when the interns present the TPP to the Catalyst Industry Advisors in mid-August, that you will have a slide that has these 3 nested circles, and you will describe your TAM, your SAM, and your SOM, and the criteria for subdividing down. So again, these market reports are ideal. Well, these are places to get this type of data. If you look down at the bottom in that red arrow, this is a report that looks at multi-cancer early detection, and they're showing, if you look to the blue box to the right of it, that this market's going up 20% a year. Now, it doesn't really, you think about something, they're not going to sell 20% more hamburgers next year than this year. But for something like these liquid biopsy tests, it doesn't surprise me, given how hot this field is, that the market's going up 20% a year, or 21.5% a year, according to this company. And so what's important about this is that if your patent is good, let's say, for fun, not for fun, but let's just say, as an example, for 12 more years, and then your product goes off patent. Of course, when it goes off patent, the price can plummet because it becomes generic and anyone can make it and sell it. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But anyway, you might be focused on the market during the 12 years of patent life, when you can garner the most attractive price, et cetera, et cetera. And so the thing is that these sort of market estimates that you would make to a venture capitalist or to a company you're trying to license your product to would be, not just next year, but for, some foreseeable future. This is a database called Global Data. Actually, this is a database most of you have access to. It's a pretty powerful database. It's really pretty cool. And this is just showing that and we will be having training by a person from Global Data in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. And so if you look at the top there, those are the different fields the database has: companies, sectors, countries. And this is the one, analysis. And you can ask for it to focus on early cancer detection. And these are a series of reports on early cancer detection markets. If you look at the far right, these are the dates of when these reports were released. And if you say to yourself, oh, I wonder if they're pretty similar. Well, yeah, you're exactly right. The one at the top came out a year ago in a couple months, and obviously they took the report from 2 years before, excuse me, from a year and a half before, and updated it. And so you can guess that Global Data is going to have an updated report on this in a few months. And so sometimes it's fun, and now I'm using that word correctly, to look back at a report from 10 years ago. And it's like, oh, what was their crystal ball 10 years ago? And compare and contrast that to the reality of today. You have to have time in your hands to do stuff like that. And this is so this is just the abstract for this report that's called Landmark Year Ahead for Colon Cancer Testing and Liquid Biopsies, Global Data. There's other sources of information. There's other impacts on this. If you look at the top, the number of customers and the number of patients or the number of clients can be dictated by lots of things, because depending upon whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're old or not, that can dictate whether you're eligible for a particular medicine or a particular treatment or not. Your family history, your own medical history, your diet, your lifestyle, your economic status, all those things can come into play and impact your, let's say, appropriateness, or a word like that, for the intervention. And at the bottom here is just a list of different databases that talk about, NCI SEER, SEER. And I put the definition there because it's not really intuitive what SEER stands for. And then both the NIH and the FDA are just rich in databases that I'll get to in a second. But there's lots of sources of information. And then here's the thing. This is what I said was coming up. Going from the TAM to the SAM, going from everybody in the world to who you really can get to. And as it says there at the top in bold, who you're really capable of. Sorry, I hope the word's reaching. I got to move some box on top of it for me. Yes, reaching, capable of reaching. That's really the funnel going from TAM to SAM, and it could be geographic. If you look at the bottom, let's start at the bottom. Let's say your patents are only good in the United States of America. Let's say you're only going to have salespeople in the United States of America, and let's say you're only going to advertise in US television shows and magazines. Well, then that's really your SAM. It's really just people in the US, because you can't call people in China your customers, even though they could benefit from your product. If your patents don't work there, you're not advertising there, and you got no salespeople there. At the top, it's really what you might do too is just focus on those most likely to use it, as opposed to those less likely to use it. My point is this, is going from TAM to SAM, there's many different ways to make that step. But again, at the top, this is the key. It's really the subset of the world that your business is capable of reaching. Now, again, I already said this. Going from SAM to SOM, this is really where you want to be, let's say, honest or realistic. It's okay to be a little optimistic, but not be ridiculous. For any of you that watch, what's that show? Shark Tank, which is this. Yeah, I should have said that earlier. I mean, I've seen it. We do a lot of that whole thing of pitching and stuff in Catalyst. This whole innovation entrepreneurship, it's like that on steroids, right? Slams and hackathons and pitchathons and apathons and this and that. They're all pretty similar. But when people are like exaggerating, it's immediately apparent. So you really want to be realistic. And again, at the bottom, it's like, what is the story on the competition? Are you the first drug for pancreas cancer? Are you the 10th hypertension drug? What are your capabilities to beat the pavement and try to get customers? And are the customers likely to change what they're currently using? I mean, are they being nicely addressed with your competitor's product such that you'd have to kind of convince them to change? And we all know what that's like. Once you get used to the iPhone, it's pretty uphill switching to Android. And so this is an example of Tam in the area of cell-free circulating DNA liquid biopsy. There's about 120 million people in America that are over the age of 45. That's the cutoff age now for testing for colon cancer. And then of that, there's a subset of about a third that are at elevated risk for one reason or another. And those are the people that it would be prudent for them to get a blood test once a year rather than a colonoscopy once every 10 years, for example. And then, and this is actually actual data that Sohaila pulled. I don't mean data. These are actual numbers that Sohaila pulled out of a Garden Health, a really fascinating company, Garden Health, brochure on their test for colon cancer. And you can see the SO them there at the bottom as a subset. Okay, competitive landscape. Who else is already selling what you want to sell, or who else is trying to develop something that would be doing the same thing you want to sell? And so you want to come up with what's referred to as the value proposition, which is a very popularly used word that's very, very important what it means. But if you look at the three bullets at the bottom, it's, what's your competitor doing right? And conversely, where are they not doing great that you can move into? What are the opportunities? And it's really just being honest to compare and contrast your product against the other similar products, whether they're already being sold or they're going to be sold. And what you want to do is identify the competitors. And for this, these databases are key. And again, try to analyze their strengths and weaknesses, try to figure out what their market share is, how much money they're making, et cetera, et cetera. And like I said at that first bullet, you will figure out, of course it matters whether they're already on the market or they're like you in the pipeline. And so in terms of understanding your competition, you can talk to customers. Again, you can use online resources. You can talk to these other companies, obviously legit. You can use these databases. And for things like, digital health, you can try them out. My wife's deciding between two different technologies for an artificial knee. It's fascinating, the differences between the two. Yeah, obviously you can't try it out. These are some, actually that's a true story as of last night. But the joke was as of a minute ago. Okay, global data, again, this is another one of those pull-down menus. This is the Intelligence Center. Yeah, pretty grandiose term for it, although pretty clever, the Intelligence Center. Actually, I really like it now. So if you go to the Intelligence Center, you can find out about the competition and the like. These are a list of companies that are in the space. Biodesics, Garden Health, I mentioned. Exact Science is also a great company, PerkinElmer. And so for each of the companies, you can study them, find out how important their colon cancer test is. Is it like mission critical? Is it something it's just part of one of many, many offerings, et cetera, et cetera. You can delve into these different companies and you can get a lot of information about the tests they're selling and how they're selling them. And these are specifically here, Sohail's got to specific colon tests, like the one at the top, Cologuard, that you read about on TV, excuse me, that you hear about on TV. Grail's got this lab developed test. Exact Science has a number of different tests. They've sort of picked up a number of other they've been acquiring companies. And you can customize the tables based on the fields you're interested in exploring. And you can delve in more to how they got to where they are. And then you can pull up specific reports that global data employees wrote about these companies. Like they went to meetings when the company's presenting, et cetera, et cetera. So again, product features, what the customers are thinking, they like it, they don't like it, strengths and weaknesses. In summary, customer is key, potential market size is key, TAM, SAM, SOM. Calculating what your return on investment will be, super important. And remember that slide I had last week that I mentioned how dramatic it is to me, just given that drugs take $1 billion and a digital health product could take, 1/1000th of that. And so return on investment is really a function of the product. So 2 last slides. This is a database that we put together that has, this is a spreadsheet that some of you maybe have already been sent. This is 40 different databases that the Catalyst program put together. Actually, I just went through it. If you have an extra, it doesn't even take that long. Just to click through each, and this is what, to all the interns on the call, I recommend you do this. You click through each of the 40. It doesn't take that long, 20 minutes max, and just see the information that's available. And finally, if you look at the bottom, in like a month and an upcoming internship workshop is going to be on the business model canvas that addresses aspects of what we've been talking about tonight. The other thing I want to say, and this is my last slide, is I mentioned last week that NSF I-Corps in Berkeley, it's by Zoom, it's a Berkeley, UCSF, Stanford. 6 of the Catalyst teams have already done this, or one just this week. And if you look there at the bottom right, there's 5 upcoming sessions. And again, these take place over 1 week. It's a Monday, it's a Wednesday, it's a Monday. I've sat in on it twice in the last couple months. It's really interesting. And we're not so naive to think that all 15 projects are going to do it, but we're hoping that, 10 might. And 5 or 6 have already done it. And if your PI can't do it because she can't do it, don't hesitate just to do it on yourself, an intern or 2. In fact, a couple of the Catalyst teams, it was just the staffers from the labs and the interns that were doing it. Okay, thank you very much. There's Sohaila Shah's email address, and I'm going to turn it over to Rupa Ramamurthy.
Thank you, Charles. I will just share screen and share the project management presentation. So I will be presenting on project management. 1 second, let me put it in presentation mode. Okay, so basically, what is project management? Now, when you're building the Warrior Stadium, right? When the Warrior Stadium was being built just near our campus, you have to first lay the ground structure, lay the foundation. Only then can you build subsequent floors, add the electrical, etc. So what we have here is the Warrior Stadium as it was going up, but also a Gantt chart. Now, what is a Gantt chart? It shows the schedule for the different activities, a beginning date, end date, but also dependencies, like what has to be done before something else is done. So this is just a snapshot of a Gantt chart. Now, in terms of project management processes, there are 5 processes. there is the initiation, conception and initiation of the project. And this includes putting together the project charter, knowing who is the sponsor of the project or who's the champion of the project. Then the project team gets together. This is the definition and planning of the project. So what is the budget allocated to the project? What is the scope? What has to be done within this budget? And then to look at the timeline, like you have different work packages. That is the work breakdown structure. Look at what is the schedule, what is the timeline for the different activities. Then put together Gantt charts similar to what was there in the earlier slide. Then you have a communication plan, like what has to be communicated to whom, when, and in what format. For example, if there's senior management, maybe you just need to show a dashboard on what activities, red, yellow, and green, what activities on track, behind, and versus with the project team, you may have to have detailed meeting notes with action items, when the deliverables are due, etc. Then there's also a risk management plan, which I will talk about later. Then you have the kickoff and the project starts executing. And while the project is executing, you're always monitoring and control. How is the project doing? How is it progressing versus what was the plan? And looking at that in terms of how is the cost versus what was planned? How is the schedule versus what was planned? And scope, because sometimes you can have scope creep or additional work being put in, and that has to be accounted. And of course, everything you have to still keep. Important thing is the quality of the project, the quality of the product. And then the project closeout, when the project ends, developing reports, post-mortem, what worked well, what didn't work well. And the thing with the project is it has a definite beginning and a definite end, rather than things that just keep continuing. Now for the risk management plan, identify what are the risks. And like these risks, if they, what is the probability that the risk occurs, high, medium, or low? And then if the risk occurs, what would be the impact, high, medium, or low? And then how do you respond to the risk? Do you mitigate the risk? Do you plan around the risk, etc.? And when the project is progressing, you monitor and you control the risk. For example, here, like one of the things, for example, you have a sole supplier for a piece for a medical device part. Now, the risk that the sole supplier will not deliver may be medium, but if the sole supplier does not deliver, the impact would be high. So what you could do is qualify an alternate supplier, just so that in case there's any problem here, to get it from an alternate supplier. So then what we will be talking about further is introducing project management, the advantages of project management, project goals, aims associated with budget, milestones, and schedules, and tracking catalyst projects against the aims and associated milestones. Now, these are just different pipelines for therapeutics, diagnostics, digital health, medical device projects. And I'm just showing some of the activities that may be part of different projects. Now, in terms of project management, there is the triangle, the cost, the scope, and the schedule. Now, if your scope increases, your schedule may be more, your cost may be more. Or if you have a defined cost, you may have to cut the scope to be able to accomplish it within the cost. And within the triangle, it is the quality of the work, the quality of the product. So why do you need project management? It helps you keep focused on the project goals and aims, and develop a project plan and track progress against the plan, improves your chances of achieving the goals. And it also gives you a defined process and justification for pivoting when it is needed. Because you don't know a plan, you don't have a plan, you don't know where you're going. Even if you have to pivot, you know that you're specifically pivoting from a given plan. For example, there is climbing, supposing the goal is to climb Mount Everest. Now you have to break it into smaller parts, go to Everest Base Camp, then go from Camp 1 to Camp 2. You have to plan that you have enough of the resources, the food, the supplies, etc. So like that, when we have a project, we have the big goal, but we have the aims associated with a schedule and a budget. For example, one of the milestones associated with the aim, achieve compound with affinity for target kinase in low micromolar range and desired selectivity over other kinase targets. So that could be like a milestone. Now, this is examples where you have different activities along with the schedule. And then you have the milestones, like the milestones are the diamonds, hit identification, lead identification, or patent filing, design freeze for a medical device. And here, again, similar what we had already spoken about, you plan the project, plan the scope, then you monitor, you track the progress, compare the plan versus what is actually happening, and then you take actions to bring the project back in schedule, or if there's a deviation, to account for it. And here are examples, actual project progress versus project plan, aims versus what has been achieved in a given time, milestone to be reached with versus the given aims, have those milestones been reached, and plan budget to reach milestones versus actual budget to reach milestones. For example, for a therapeutic project, say this is the proposed, and then you can see that the actual, it is taking longer. So the timelines have been shifted. There may have been some delays. And here, like say for a medical device, prototyping, bench testing, and actually it's going earlier than planned, so it will finish sooner. And the different ways, like the Gantt charts I spoke about, you could use MS Project, and at UCSF, you also have smart sheets that you could use for these, listing various activities, beginning, end, what activity depends on what other activity. And then examples of using target product profiles in project management. For example, in the target product profile, you would have defined how good, example, a small molecule inhibitor for NASH needs to be in preclinical animal models to move forward. So managing the project will have a go, no-go decision based on whether this endpoint is met. Then, for example, you would have clinical trial inclusion, exclusion criteria for patients. And based on this will be project managing to ensure that patient enrollment is sufficient and is achieved in a timely manner. Or say for a medical device project, you have certain performance requirements are defined for a medical device, and will be project managing and making go, no-go decisions based on whether the minimal or optimal performance requirements are met. And then if you have key design challenges and the TPP, then you can put a risk management plan to how to address or mitigate the key challenges in the design. And again, to recap, the three things of the triangle, the cost, the scope, schedule, project goals, and then you have to monitor and track the projects against the plan and when it is actually being executed. And I'll leave you with this. And any questions?
Hey, Rupa, great. Hey, thanks so much for that whirlwind coverage of project management. And so, yeah, I agree. I want to ask for any questions. I just want to clarify a few things because I was looking through the chat while Rupa was talking. And so I just want to mention a few things that are in the chat. Somebody asked, oh, can we, if we're not on a project team because we're not a Catalyst Summer intern, can we still get the PowerPoints and the Excel spreadsheet with the databases and the other, templates, the target product profiles, et cetera, et cetera? And the answer is absolutely yes. Just write me or write Nate, and we'll send them to you. The interns working on the projects will have access will have access to them through a box account that each of the 15 projects have. But for those of you that aren't on one of those 15 project teams, we'll just send them to you directly. It's no problem at all. Now, with respect to access to global data, there's three things I want to say. First, Global Data is a business intelligence firm with thousands of employees that covers every industry you can think of. Aerospace, probably consumer products and cars and this and that and everything else, anything you can think about. We have access to two of the databases, the pharmaceuticals one and the medical device one. I'm just pointing that out. So if you just Google if you just go to their website and look at all the databases, two of the slew of them we have access to, pharmaceuticals and the medical device one that has a different name. It's not called medical device, but it's sort of intuitive. It doesn't matter. I should have looked it up. Doesn't matter. Here's the thing. I believe we have to send them your email address to get access. There's another hypothesis that if you register with a UCSF email address, you'll get access. I don't know the answer to that. If you want to try it, if you have a UCSF email address, go ahead and try it. What I've done in the years past, summers past, is for the interns interested in access, you have to write us, and then we send your email address to Global Data, and they grant you access and a password and stuff. Now, if you're sitting here on the call and it's like, oh, wow, I'm really interested, but I do not have a @ucsf.edu email address, it just makes it trickier. So it just makes it trickier because you're going to have like a helper. But don't be discouraged. We've done this in summers past. It works out fine, especially with the Zoom. So are there any questions for Rupa? And I'm going to look to see if there's anything else in this chat thing that it's okay. Are there any questions at all around commercialization fields, the TPP or market analysis or project management and the like that Sohaila or Rupa or myself can address for you?
Hi, Dr. Hart. This is Swas.
Hey,
I just have one question. So the Catalyst leads will be reaching out with a project idea that is not the project that we are working on or Catalyst funded. It's just a idea, and then with a team member, we have to create the TPP, right?
No. So, Swas, you and Minnie, your co-PI on your fascinating project around target identification for the mechanism of action of a drug that you discovered that's protective of kidney damage, you will have 4 or 5 or 6 interns assigned to you. And the 4 or 5 or 6 interns will be creating, with your help, will be creating a TPP for your project,
Got it.
And one of the 4 Catalyst staffers, either Nate Prorock or Sohaila Shah, or Rupa Ramamurthy, or yours truly, Charles Hart, will be your facilitator. And in the case of your project, unfortunately for you, it happens to be me.
Great. That's amazing.
Okay, but all the TPPs are on the 15 Catalyst Award projects.
Got it.
And so I'm glad you asked that, because I didn't think that was confusing, but obviously it was, and I was wrong. Okay, great. Any other, oh yeah, it's okay, I can even read this. Business intern here. If anyone has questions on this process. Yeah, I dropped off my screen. Whoever wrote that, thank you very much. So there's some guy that, or some person that just volunteered to help. And so I encourage any of the interns that are going to be focused on the business fields to write that guy's, yeah, his or her name, excuse me. It's Elena. I can see it because Nate wrote back. Here, let me say something else. We got a couple minutes. What we're doing this year, and I think it's a bit of an experiment, but I really like it. And I just realized, I said this last week, is that the TPPs, a given TPP has like 20 fields. As you saw in my slide, there's like 20 lines. And as you saw the blue arrows, about 7 of the fields are business related, marketing related, commercialization related. Turns out that like 4 of the fields are medicine related. 6 of the fields are technology related. And so what an intern is going to do is she or he is going to sign up for a group of fields. She's going to sign up for the medical ones, or the science ones, or the pharmaceutical ones, or the technology ones, or the business ones. And hopefully, on every single team, there'll be like 2 interns doing business, or 3 interns doing the business part. And the idea is that those 3 interns will be responsible for all 8 of the business fields, and they can figure out how to divide and conquer, divvy them up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the presentation, where you present in August to the industry advisors, each of you will present, and the first person will present, 2 of the business fields. The other person will present 3, the other person will present 2. But the key is that if you're sinking your teeth into business, you're going to sink your teeth into all the business fields, all the blue arrows. If you're into pharmaceutics, you're going to sink your teeth into all the different drug discovery aspects of in vitro, in vivo, pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, toxicology, manufacturing. I hope that was clear, but I just wanted to say it. Any other questions?
And sometime, just to clarify on that, there may be like 2 interns in the science or 2 in the medicine. So you could divvy those fields up between the 2 of you all too.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Oh, I have a question regarding the global data access.
Yes.
In your previous answer, you said if you don't have a UCSF email, students would need to have a helper. Would you able to elaborate on that? Like, how would that process work?
You know what, Alyssa, say again what you said at the end there. You'd have to have a helper, and then just say again the last part of what you said.
Oh yeah. So how would that process work? Like for them helping us if we don't have a UCSF?
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah, I can take this one, Charles.
Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Yeah, so Alyssa, hi, nice to meet you. I sent you an email. You're part of my project team, and I'm really excited to work with you as well as all the other interns. First off is that we mentioned the 2 big databases that we have access to in global data. It's pharma and devices. Digital health is not particularly strong in global data, so I don't want people to bet on global data if they're doing a digital health project to be their be all and end all. So that's the first thing I want to say. Second thing is that the way that we've worked around this in the past is say a student, a trainee, current intern who does not have access to global data pairs up with, say, a couple other people that either do or don't have access to global data, start a Zoom meeting, and whoever has access to global data, for example, one of the Calculus facilitators, shares their screen. We do a bunch of searches, we see what's in there, we do some deep dives. Everyone's kind of looking and eyeing and recommending, okay, now try this search function or check in through this these databases that's inside there. And collectively, through that meeting, we downloaded a bunch of PDFs, downloaded a bunch of Excel reports, and shared them with everybody involved so that the research happened and the information was downloaded. And then we could all kind of process that info asynchronously and then pull from it to create the TPP.
Hey, thanks for that explanation, Nate. Katrina's got a question in the chat. I should have said this before. I'm going to say it now. So we just, I don't know, it wasn't yesterday. I think it was the day before yesterday. It might have been yesterday. Divided up the interns as a function of their preferences. And in fact, there's a relatively large handful of interns. It doesn't matter. So Katrina, I have not, maybe some of the interns have been contacted, but a lot of the interns have not. And so the emails going out that say, oh, you've been assigned to this team, and here are your 4 other teammates, and here's the professor, and we're hoping to have our first meeting, you know, within the next 10 days. Those emails are going out yesterday, today, or tomorrow.
Yeah, and there's still a good chunk of folks who have not submitted their rank order. Katrina, I see that we do not have your top 5 list. So if you would still like to participate in this internship and be a part of one of these project teams, please send me your rank order and we'll assign you to a project.
Yeah, too bad I didn't know that. I would have said that was the reason. No, I haven't written, Katrina, I haven't written to my teams. Abdirahman, I see you have a question.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'm with Dr. Haas, Brian Haas,
Yeah.
with needle excretion. I was wondering about per se. Because I thought that I should just try to start mine early enough, and I'm actually having quite an issue with starting it.
No, let me clarify, because I was the one who sent you all the email, right?
Yes.
And what I had told you all is I sent the template. I didn't expect you all to fill out the template. We will discuss that at our first meeting. What I wanted you to do is just read the proposal so you can get an idea of what the project is about.
Okay.
So I just sent the proposal.
Okay. I understand. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey,
Yeah, and just to clarify to everyone, especially if my messages were not clear, I sent the template, and I just wanted to send you all the template that we will assign fields at the first meeting. And I sent you all the project proposals. Those were the ones I just wanted you all to read, so you all know what the project was about before our first meeting. Because if you had an issue, I think others may have had an issue, because I may think my email is clear, but it may not be. So sorry about that.
It's all right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Elena, I see you have a question.
Thank you. Just with like a little bit of new information, I have a little question. So I was under the impression that I already had a team, but I would like to coordinate with other business interns now that I understand that we're going to be helping more than one team, so we can like split up the stuff. Who should
Sorry,
we?
you know what? Elena, let me interrupt you, okay? Just because clearly I wasn't clear. Okay. So let me you're only going to work on one project, one of the 15 projects. So you're only going to work on one project. I'm not sure which one you've been assigned to, but that's your project. It sounds like you're interested in the business fields, those blue arrow fields, and not the medicine fields, let's say. What I was saying is there might be another intern that's also interested in doing the business fields on your project, on your specific project, and that you and he or you and she would jointly do it, or divide and conquer, or both, or a little of this and a little of that, but you'll only be working on one project. Is that clear now? Cool.
Just out of curiosity, if anyone else is a business intern, please shoot me an email so we can coordinate.
Wait, you're
Sorry, that was to everyone.
I know. Hey,
There are a lot of
I'll tell you
business
something funny.
interns.
I'll tell you something funny. Just, and you wouldn't know this. There's no way you'd know this. So UCSF, is only medicine, dentistry, nursing, pharmacy. No law school, no business school, no, like I said. And so we reach out to local colleges, local universities, the obvious suspects, San Jose State, San Francisco State, City College, San Francisco, Stanford, We have an unbelievable number of business students, both MBA students and undergraduates. And so you're at risk of getting a lot of emails. And so I don't think you want everyone that's interested in business to write you that's on this call, because it's a lot of people. But it's fantastic for us, right, to get that input from all you. Yeah, but what's interesting about Elena's question? Let me say this. You know what? I haven't thought about this, and I see we're past 5, so I'm going to try to say this quickly. And the 4 of us, now this is actually important. The 4 of us will try to figure out how to do something. And what that something is this, that halfway through the summer, we'll try to figure out how to have a forum where the best practices from one team can be shared with the other teams. These are not like little silos, even though I just realized that's how it's coming out of our mouths, that, like I said, you're only going to work on one project. But the 4 of us are going to figure out a way to, Elena catalyzed this question, that how can Elena and her business people on her project take advantage of the fact there's 14 other projects doing about the same thing that she's doing. And so if any of you have ideas on how we can get this sort of cross-fertilization, or, the 4 of us will talk about this tomorrow, but Elena, I really appreciate your question, because obviously, I didn't say that was in existence. And now I realize it'd be really not smart to not do what you're proposing. Go ahead, Rupa, what are you going to say?
Nate put in chat, and this is all just in progress, maybe a Slack channel or Discord, Nate mentioned.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, great idea. Yeah, people have ideas on how to do this sort of inter-team. The intra-team is going to be fine.
Maybe my idea is very much more boring. Nate is more progressive, and I'm like old-fashioned. I was thinking maybe like have all the business people together on a Zoom call and have people share experiences, or a meetup room kind of thing. But I prefer Nate's, because that could be like it doesn't have to be in sync, and could have.
No. You know what's funny is that I just said, listen to this. I just said that I've sat in on this ICOR thing twice, this ICOR training twice, just in the last 3 months. So I think Rupa's idea of having a Zoom where the business people from each of the teams give a short presentation is actually cool. I'm not negating.
No, I was not thinking a short presentation. I was more thinking like just learnings and discussing with each other.
Okay, it's all good. Well, Elena, thanks for suggesting. Thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate that. And I want to thank everybody for joining again. And we'll see you. Well, some of you might see each other before 2 weeks if you have your first meeting before then. And hopefully you will. Hopefully you will have your first meeting in the next 2 weeks. But we'll have the next workshop. In 2 weeks exactly. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.